Hey guys, AB here from B&H, hanging with Nick from Moog, and of course, we are at Moog Fest 2018, Durham, North Carolina, having a great time, seeing lots of great gear, but of course, we're really here to see the Grandmother, which is the latest release from Moog. It's a semi-modular analog synthesizer, sounds amazing. We were playing with it before we shot the video. It's fat, we love it, and we're gonna go through it a little bit and have Nick tell us some of the really cool features. So, I kind of want to start with this first. What was Moog's thinking in terms of making the Grandmother? Was there any kind of thought process, or why did this even come about?
We as a company have one foot in our history, I feel like, all the time, and we have one foot in the future. What are we gonna do new? And how are we gonna draw our inspiration from the instruments that made us who we are today? And I think that this is a really great representation of that. A lot of the circuit design in the synthesizer come from our legacy modular systems that we've built for over 50 years, particularly the filter, the envelope, the mixer, and the spring reverb, which is something that we haven't brought to one of our newer, smaller synthesizers yet. So it's really a treat to be able to access some of those original circuit designs, or very close facsimiles of them, and paired with some of the technology that's become commonplace in our studios today, like USB, MIDI, arpeggiators, things that were much, much harder to do or impossible to do back then. Not to mention that it brings it into a nice small form factor you can put under your arm.
Oh yeah, it's definitely compact and manageable, not super heavy, and it's just, and it just looks great. Now, of course, we know that everything on this keyboard is analog, everything, except for the sequencer, which is digital, which makes sense because it gives you more flexibility, basically.
Yeah, so an analog sequencer would be like the one we have in the DFAM, those 2 rows of knobs, very fun to play with, but the sequencer in this is probably more what people are used to, especially if they're coming from a playing background. You can play in a sequence and hear it back. It'll send and receive that over MIDI,
which is cool,
or USB. And those are features that we felt were really important to be able to bring to people on a synthesizer like this.
Sure, and it's actually kind of cool too, because you were showing me before that there are 3 different sequences that you can make, and you can switch back and forth, which gives you a little bit of flexibility in terms of building songs or sections of songs.
When you flip the switch to go to the next sequence, it will wait till the end of the sequence that it's playing to get to the next one. So if you have a verse, a chorus, and a bridge, really quick, when your left hand has a second to
right.
move the knob, you can just do it, and when it gets around to the one, you'll be going to the next section.
That's right, keep that dance floor moving, don't chop up the beat, let people keep loving what you're doing. That's great. After the sequence, we've got a modulation section, we've got oscillators, we have other utilities. There are 2 filters and 1 envelope, and there are all kinds of ways to change the sound. And trust me when I tell you, not only is it versatile, but it's fat sounding. Last, you touched upon this, but there's a spring reverb built into this unit, which sounds incredible. I'm so glad you guys put that in this thing.
It's a really cool thing to add. Often I think anybody that plays these analog synthesizers, the first thing they're going to do is put a little reverb or delay on it.
Right.
So we have this technology available, the analog spring reverbs that we've used, similar circuits in our legacy modular systems. Sure. And we thought it'd be great to bring it to something this size, and it's a treat.
No, I mean, and it really does sound, it's almost like taking the best of what the old reverbs and the older units were great at, but with the technology now that we have, it just seems even warmer. And more lush.
50 years more experience making them. So.
Right. That's awesome. Also, on the back panel of the Grandmother, there is I guess it's an instrument input. What would you see that used for, and mostly?
Great for guitar. It's got a lot of gains. You can plug guitar in. You can get a little bit of drive out of the mixer from it, which is cool. It has some asymmetric overdrive. And then it'll run into the filter, the low-pass filter, and the spring reverb if you decide to use it. So it's a fun tool for guitar players or vocalists or other synth players that aren't using the Eurorack format, that need a little bit of a hotter input if their main out of their synth can't get that 5-volt Eurorack standard.
Which is cool. I mean, also I can see this, having been an engineer in a big studio years ago, this could be one of those little tricks of the trade where, the engineer runs the guitar signal through this reverb, and everyone wants to know, how did you get that lush sound?
Yeah.
Can't tell you. Well, it may be, coming through one of these. Yeah, a really amazing piece of gear. And honestly, the best way for you to understand what this sounds like and how versatile it is to really have Nick sort of put it through its paces. So I'm just gonna let you go ahead and show us really what the Grandmother's all about.
Great. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
Let's start on the left of the instrument and work our way across. At the very left, we have an Arpeggiator Sequencer module which will take the information from the keyboard and the sequencer block and send it to the rest of the instrument. If I hold down a chord in ARP mode, it'll arpeggiate that chord. We have some octave ranges and orders to choose from. After that, you have the sequencer section, which will play back any melody that you punch in up to 256 steps. There are 3 positions to save your sequences. If I want to record something, I'll go all the way to the right. When I go back to sequence and hold down a note, it'll play it back. Next, we have the modulation section. The modulation section is an analog oscillator just like the 2 audio rate oscillators, and it is capable of volt per octave tracking in audio rates. You can use it as a 3rd oscillator with this synthesizer. It has some normal controls to go to pitch amount, cutoff amount, and pulse width amount, and those are tied to the mod wheel. We have the Modulation Engine, which is tied normally, if you don't patch, to the mod wheel. So here I can turn the mod wheel up and change things like the cutoff amount. You have a few different waveforms to choose from, including an analog sine wave, which you don't get in many of our synthesizers. Also, you have a sample and hold output, which is useful for randomly generating positions of any control on the synthesizer. Next up, we have the oscillator section. This has 2 analog oscillators, each with selectable waveforms and octave ranges. The second oscillator also has a linear FM patch point, as well as hard sync to the first oscillator for some really cool dynamic sounds. Right now we're only hearing 1 oscillator. We have our octave range and a few waveforms to choose from. Then we can bring in our second oscillator using our mixer section. Next up, we have the mixer. Pretty straightforward. You have inputs that will break normalization with any of the channels. This can be used to some CV signals as well. It is DC coupled. And it has a really great asymmetric overdrive if you push it hard. Next is the utility section. None of this is normaled, but if you want to use patching, you have some mults, a high pass filter, and a bipolar attenuator, which on the left can invert a CV signal, which is very handy. Our filter is based off of the 904 legacy modular circuit, just a really awesome sounding filter. What you expect, 24 dB, ladder filter, resonance, really useful on this instrument. Next, you have the envelope. There's some really cool things about this envelope that I love. These are your 3 time controls: attack, decay, and release. This is your sustain amount on the fader. You can trigger it from whatever you want, though it's normal to trigger from the keyboard gate. And you have both a positive and negative output for CV. In case you want a phase inverted signal to go somewhere, you can send out of both simultaneously. You can see to the right of the envelope here, you have your VCA mode. It'll either use the envelope to control the VCA, as you might expect, or next to it, this keyboard release mode will only take the on-off from the keys and add the release stage of the envelope to it at the end, letting you use your attack and decay for whatever purpose you want, like the filter. Last but certainly not least, you have your spring reverb. You have a mix amount here. Even with just a little bit, it takes the edge off the synthesizer and really makes it sound great. There's also a startup command on the keyboard that turns off local control, which means you will have to patch from here if you want to use the internal oscillators or other gear like a Mother 32, DFAM, or Eurorack rig. In that context, this is capable of being a fully modular keyboard and a collection of incredibly powerful modules for you to add to your setup.
Well guys, there you have it. the Moog grandmother. Nick, thanks so much for the amazing presentation and all the information on this great keyboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for having us. I'm AB from B&H. For more information, check us out on bhphoto.com.